What happens when an undercover CEO steps into his own business, only to realize it's falling apart from the inside? Welcome back, everyone. Today's story is a wild ride of power, deception, and redemption. A successful restaurant owner thought his business was thriving until he went undercover in his own kitchen. What did he find? Overworked employees, a ruthless manager, and a system built on fear. But here's the twist. When the truth came out, so did the consequences. This is more than just a business lesson. It's a fight for justice. Stay tuned, because this story is going to leave you speechless. Ethan had built the Artisan Table, a growing chain of high-end restaurants, from the ground up. What had started as a single small bistro had expanded into a well-known brand with multiple locations. But as his company grew, Ethan found himself increasingly detached from daily operations. He spent most of his time in corporate meetings, reviewing financial reports, and overseeing expansion plans, relying on his manager's updates to stay informed. Lately, however, those reports have been troubling. Customer complaints were rising, staff turnover was at an all-time high, and online reviews hinted at poor service and long wait times. When Ethan questioned Gordon, the kitchen manager at his busiest location, he was met with the usual excuses. "It's just the industry, boss. People don't want to work anymore." Gordon assured him that everything was under control and blamed the problems on lazy employees and unreliable suppliers. But Ethan wasn't convinced. Numbers and reports couldn't tell him what was really happening inside his restaurants. He had once prided himself on knowing his staff by name, but now he barely recognized anyone outside his corporate team. It was clear he was out of touch. Frustrated, Ethan made a decision. He would go undercover as a kitchen assistant at his busiest restaurant. If he wanted to understand what was going wrong, he needed to see it firsthand. With dyed hair, glasses, and a fake name, Ben, he transformed himself into an unrecognizable new hire. None of the restaurant staff had ever met him in person, as his face was only seen in corporate newsletters and company updates. Now he would step into the heat of the kitchen, not as the owner, but as one of them. He signed up for a week-long trial shift, determined to uncover the truth about what was happening behind the scenes. As Ethan stood outside the Artisan Table's busiest location, dressed in a plain chef's coat and cheap sneakers, he felt a mixture of anticipation and unease. He had no idea what he was about to walk into. Taking a deep breath, he pushed open the back door of the kitchen and stepped inside, into the chaos that had been hidden from him for far too long. As soon as Ethan, now Ben, stepped into the kitchen, he was hit by a wall of heat, noise, and urgency. The air was thick with the scent of seared meat, garlic, and butter, but beneath the inviting aromas was an undercurrent of tension. Chefs barked orders at one another, the sizzle of pans filled the air, and the rhythmic chopping of knives against cutting boards created an almost frantic beat. Dishwashers frantically scrubbed at endless piles of plates, and waitstaff darted in and out, their faces tight with stress. No one had the time to acknowledge him. A man with graying hair and a perpetual scowl strode toward him. Gordon, the kitchen manager. Without even making eye contact, Gordon shoved a stained apron at him. "New guy? Great. You're with Maya. Try not to screw up," he grumbled before disappearing into his office. Ethan barely had time to process the dismissive greeting before a woman in her late 30s with sharp eyes and an even sharper efficiency gestured for him to follow. "You're with me, newbie. No time for small talk. Let's go," she said. This was Maya, the sous chef, and it was clear she had no patience for anything beyond keeping up with the relentless pace of the kitchen. Maya handed him a knife and pointed at a massive pile of onions. "Start chopping, even sizes, fast." Ethan nodded and got to work, but within minutes he was struggling to keep up. His eyes watered from the onions, his fingers fumbled with the knife, and his wrists ached from the repetitive motion. Maya barely looked at him, her hands moving with the efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. In the far corner, a young dishwasher, Liam, was sweating through his uniform, scrubbing at a mountain of dirty plates. Every time he caught up, more dishes were thrown into the sink, with barely a glance in his direction. His face was red, his movements sluggish, but no one offered him a break. Ethan's gut tightened. Was this how his employees always worked? Between the blistering heat, the overwhelming pace, and the lack of breaks, Ethan quickly realized that this was nothing like what he had imagined running a kitchen would be. He had envisioned teamwork and professionalism, but instead he saw exhaustion, disorganization, and fear. And the worst part? The one person who was supposed to be leading, Gordon, was nowhere to be seen. As the night wore on, Ethan felt the full weight of the relentless grind his employees endured every day. His back ached from hours of chopping, plating, and running orders, but the rest of the staff hardly slowed down. They weren't just working hard, they were pushing themselves to the brink. Despite the exhaustion written on their faces, no one complained. It was clear this was the expected norm. Ethan saw it most clearly in Liam, the dishwasher. The young man's movements were sluggish, his arms trembling as he scrubbed at endless stacks of plates. The steam from the industrial dishwasher made his face glisten with sweat, and his eyes flicked nervously toward the clock every few minutes, as if counting down the seconds until the shift ended. At one point, he stumbled against the sink, barely catching himself. Ethan turned to Maya. "Shouldn't he take a break?" he asked. Maya snorted, shaking her head. "Breaks? That's funny. You get 5 minutes if you're lucky, and if Gordon catches you slacking, forget it." The words unsettled Ethan, but he didn't have time to dwell on them. The dinner rush hit like a tidal wave, orders piling up, voices shouting over one another. Ethan's hands moved automatically now, grabbing plates, wiping counters, keeping up the best he could. But even as he focused on the work, he started noticing more troubling details. The kitchen was dangerously understaffed. Instead of a full line of cooks, everyone was forced to take on extra tasks. Maya was grilling steaks one second and plating pasta the next. The prep cook was also doubling as a runner, delivering ingredients between stations. Even the waitstaff had to step in, running plates when the kitchen fell behind. What disturbed Ethan the most, though, was the way food safety was handled. A tray of raw chicken sat too close to fresh vegetables, and expired ingredients were quietly tossed into recipes instead of being thrown out. When Ethan hesitated before using a questionable-looking sauce, Maya just shrugged. "Welcome to the industry, newbie. We cut corners or we fall behind." Ethan's stomach twisted. He had built his business on a reputation for quality and integrity. But here, in one of his busiest locations, those values had become nothing more than words on a mission statement. The reality was something entirely different, a toxic environment where exhaustion ruled and survival meant turning a blind eye. Ethan had suspected poor management was a part of the restaurant's problems, but by the end of his first shift, he had no doubt. The real issue wasn't just overwork, it was Gordon. The kitchen manager operated with an iron fist, barking orders and instilling fear rather than leadership. He spent more time lurking in his office than on the floor, only emerging when something went wrong, not to help but to find someone to blame. The first major incident came when a waitress hesitated at the pass, scanning the plates in front of her. "Table 12 is missing a side of mashed potatoes," she said hesitantly. Gordon whipped around, his face twisting in irritation. "What do you mean, missing? Were you sleeping when you picked up the order?" "No, I don't want excuses! Get out of my way!" Gordon grabbed the plate, slammed it onto the counter, and yelled for Maya to fix it. The waitress flinched, mumbling an apology before scurrying away. Ethan watched in disbelief. This was how he treated his staff? Minutes later, Liam slipped up. Exhausted and barely able to keep up, the dishwasher lost his grip on a stack of plates, sending them crashing onto the floor. The entire kitchen froze. Liam's face drained of color as he braced himself for the inevitable. "Are you kidding me?" Gordon roared, stomping toward Liam. "You think we're made of money? That's coming out of your paycheck, you little idiot." Liam stammered an apology, but Gordon just shook his head in disgust. "Move any slower, and I'll replace you with someone who actually works," he spat before turning away. Ethan clenched his fists, his blood boiling. He wanted to step in right then, to tell Gordon he had no right to treat his employees like this, but if he blew his cover now, he'd never uncover the full extent of the damage. Instead, he gritted his teeth and turned back to his work. As the night dragged on, Ethan continued watching Gordon's behavior. He never lifted a finger to help, but he was quick to swoop in and humiliate someone for making a mistake. Even Maya, a veteran of the kitchen, a woman who clearly held everything together, wasn't spared. When a steak went out slightly overcooked, Gordon laid into her in front of the entire staff. "You're getting sloppy, Maya. Maybe it's time I find someone younger who actually gives a damn." Ethan saw Maya's jaw tighten, her shoulders stiffen. She didn't fight back. None of them did. Fear ruled this kitchen, and Gordon was the one holding the leash. By the time the dinner rush hit, the kitchen was in complete chaos. Orders flooded in faster than the skeleton crew could handle, and the tension rose with every passing minute. Ethan worked furiously alongside Maya, trying to keep up, but he could feel the pressure mounting. The kitchen was short-staffed, the ticket printer never stopped spitting out new orders, and Liam, who had already been pushed to his limit, was barely staying upright. Then it happened. Maya, moving too quickly between stations, reached for a pan fresh off the stovetop. The moment her hand made contact with the burning hot metal, she let out a sharp cry, dropping it instantly. The pan clattered to the floor, grease splattering across the counter and her arm. Ethan immediately turned toward her, but before he could even ask if she was okay, Gordon was already storming over. "What the hell is going on?" he barked, his face red with anger. Maya, clutching her burned arm, tried to wave him off. "It was an accident. Gordon cut her off with a sneer. "An accident? Do you have any idea how far behind we are? Get your head in the game, or get out of my kitchen." Ethan couldn't believe what he was hearing. Maya was injured, and all Gordon cared about was keeping up the pace. He expected someone, anyone, to step in to tell Gordon he was out of line, but no one did. The entire kitchen had been conditioned to accept this kind of abuse as normal. Maya, gritting her teeth, grabbed a towel and wrapped it around her burn before heading back to the grill. Ethan was still reeling from the moment when another disaster struck. A health inspector walked through the doors, unanswered. Gordon's entire demeanor shifted in an instant. The man who had been yelling at Maya moments ago suddenly straightened his posture, plastering on a fake professional smile. He hurried to shake the inspector's hand, guiding him away from the kitchen while muttering something about how impeccable their standards were. Ethan's stomach churned. So this is how it works. Gordon wasn't just incompetent, he was manipulative. He let the staff suffer, let food safety slide, and ruled through fear. But the moment someone from corporate or an official authority showed up, he put on a performance. As Ethan turned back to the line, he caught Liam's exhausted expression. The young man looked ready to collapse, but he still kept scrubbing away at another tower of dishes. Ethan had seen enough. This wasn't just a toxic work culture. This was a crisis. And if he didn't act soon, someone was going to get seriously hurt, or worse. That night, Ethan sat in his car in the empty parking lot, his hands gripping the steering wheel as he processed everything he had seen. The exhaustion, the fear, the mistreatment. It was worse than he had imagined. He had come undercover to understand his business from the ground level, and now he saw the truth. His employees weren't just overworked, they were trapped in a toxic system enabled by a manager who cared more about control than people. He couldn't ignore it any longer. It was time to act. Reaching for his phone, he called Natalie, his head of HR, one of the few people he trusted completely. The moment she picked up, he didn't waste time. "I need you to go to the restaurant tomorrow for an unannounced inspection," he said, his voice firm. There was a pause. "Why? What's going on?" "I can't explain everything right now, but I need you to dig deep. Talk to the employees, privately. Review the schedules, check how overtime is handled, and especially look into Gordon." Natalie hesitated, but she could hear the urgency in his voice. "All right, I'll be there first thing in the morning." Hanging up, Ethan took out his phone and started gathering evidence. He had spent the day watching unsafe food practices, employees working without breaks, and Gordon disappearing into his office while the staff drowned. He took pictures of expired ingredients sitting too close to fresh food, recorded the mess in the supply room, and even noted how the scheduling board showed multiple shifts being covered by too few workers. He needed proof so that when the time came to confront Gordon, there would be no excuses, no denials. Before he left, Ethan spotted Liam sitting outside the back entrance of the restaurant, staring at the ground, drained. Ethan approached him carefully. "You all right?" he asked. Liam let out a hollow laugh. "Just another day, man. Thinking about looking for a new job." Ethan clenched his jaw. Good workers were slipping through the cracks. He had seen what happened when people like Gordon were left unchecked. He wasn't going to let it continue. Tomorrow everything will change. It was time to take back control of his company and fix what had been broken for far too long. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the restaurant not as Ben, the kitchen assistant, but as himself. Ethan Carter, the owner. He walked through the front entrance instead of slipping in through the kitchen, feeling the weight of what he was about to do. Today was the day the truth came out. Inside, the tension in the air was thick. Word had spread that Natalie, the head of HR, had shown up unannounced and was conducting an inspection. Employees whispered in hushed voices, their eyes flickering with curiosity and nervousness. Meanwhile, Gordon was pacing near his office, clearly agitated. He had already tried to sweet-talk Natalie, but Ethan knew that wouldn't save him this time. As the staff gathered in the break room for what they assumed was a routine meeting, Ethan stood at the front, still in his undercover kitchen uniform. He took a deep breath. It was time. "I want to thank everyone for being here," he began, his voice calm but firm. "Before we get started, I need to introduce myself properly." With that, he removed his glasses, ran a hand through his now fading dyed hair, and let the disguise fall away. The room went completely silent. "I'm not Ben," he said. "I'm Ethan Carter. I own this restaurant." A wave of shocked gasps rippled through the room. Maya's eyes widened, her arms dropping to her sides. Liam blinked rapidly, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Some employees exchanged confused glances, while others stared in stunned silence. Ethan let the moment settle before continuing. "For the past week, I've been working here undercover. I wanted to see firsthand what's happening in my kitchen, how my staff is treated, what's really going on when a corporation isn't around." He paused, scanning the room. "And what did I see? It was unacceptable." He turned his gaze toward Gordon, whose face had gone pale. "I saw employees overworked to the breaking point. I saw safety violations, toxic management, and a team that's been running on empty for far too long." Gordon opened his mouth to defend himself, but Ethan cut him off. "I saw how you treat these people, Gordon. I saw how you take advantage of their hard work while you hide in your office. And I saw you let this place fall apart while blaming everyone but yourself." Silence. The staff waited, hanging on to his every word. Ethan turned to the employees. "You all deserve better, and starting today, things are going to change." Ethan turned to Natalie, who stood at his side with a clipboard in hand. "Effective immediately, Gordon is fired." His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. A stunned silence filled the room, followed by a few murmurs. "You can't be serious," Gordon scoffed, crossing his arms. "I've run this kitchen for years." Ethan cut him off sharply. "And in those years you've created a culture of fear, exhaustion, and abuse. I trusted you to run this restaurant the right way, and instead, you let the people who make this place great suffer under your leadership." He gestured toward the employees. "They deserve a manager who actually respects them, not one who barks orders and hides when things get tough." Gordon opened his mouth to protest, but Natalie stepped forward. "We've reviewed the reports, spoken to the staff, and assessed the working conditions. This decision is final." Defeated, Gordon gritted his teeth and stormed out, shoving past employees without a word. The moment the door slammed behind him, a heavy silence settled over the room. Then, slowly, relief began to take over. Ethan faced his employees. "I need to say this. I'm sorry." His voice was steady but filled with sincerity. "I built this company to create opportunities, to provide a workplace people could be proud of, but I let myself get too far removed from the reality of what was happening. That ends today." He turned to Maya, who had held everything together despite the pressure. "You've been the backbone of this kitchen for years. Starting today, you're the new head chef." Maya's eyes widened. "Wait, what? You've proven you can lead, you care about this team. You're the kind of person I want running this kitchen," Ethan said with a smile. Applause erupted around the room, and Maya blinked back what looked like tears before nodding firmly. "I won't let you down." Ethan then addressed Liam and the rest of the staff. "Schedules will be fixed. Overtime will be managed fairly, you will all have proper breaks, and to show my appreciation for everything you've endured, Everyone here is getting a bonus this month." A stunned silence followed, and then cheers. Real smiles spread across the team. For the first time, hope filled the kitchen. Real change had begun. A month later, Ethan walked through the doors of the artisan table, not as an undercover kitchen worker, but as the owner. This time, he wasn't stepping into chaos. Instead, the kitchen hummed with a steady, controlled rhythm. The air was still. He spotted Maya, now head chef, efficiently directing her team. Unlike Gordon, she worked alongside them, making sure everything ran smoothly while also taking the time to check in on her staff. She caught sight of Ethan and gave him a quick nod, a silent acknowledgement of everything that had changed. At the dish station, Liam was no longer drowning in dirty plates alone. A second dishwasher had been hired, and he now had reasonable shifts and actual breaks. He looked up grinning when he saw Ethan. "Didn't think I'd still be here, huh?" he joked. Ethan chuckled. "I was hoping you would be." The biggest change, however, was the way the staff carried themselves. There was no longer a fear of being yelled at for mistakes, no more hushed complaints whispered in corners. Instead, there was laughter, conversation, and most importantly, pride in their work. After finishing his walkthrough, Ethan stepped out into the main dining area, watching as customers enjoyed their meals without long waits or frustrated servers. Everything had improved, not just for the employees, but for the business itself. Natalie joined him, flipping through her reports. "Customer satisfaction is up 30%, staff turnover has dropped, we're finally seeing the restaurant running the way it was meant to." Ethan nodded, but he knew his work wasn't done. "I let this place fall apart once. I won't let it happen again." He had learned the hard way that leadership wasn't just about managing from a distance. It was about being present, understanding the people who made his company what it was. He had almost lost sight of that. But now, standing in a restaurant that finally felt like the place he had always envisioned, he knew one thing for sure. He would never let himself become disconnected from his employees again. The story of Ethan's undercover journey reveals a powerful lesson about leadership, accountability, and the importance of staying connected to the people who make a business thrive. As his restaurant chain grew, Ethan became detached from daily operations, trusting reports and managers to paint the full picture. However, numbers and spreadsheets couldn't show him the reality his employees faced every day: overwork, toxic management, and a culture of fear. By stepping into his employees' shoes, Ethan learned that true leadership isn't just about setting policies from a distance. It's about being present, listening, and taking action. His experience exposed how neglect at the top trickles down, creating a dysfunctional system where hard workers suffer while bad managers thrive. The story emphasizes that success isn't just about profits or expansion, it's about the well-being of the people behind the business. Employees aren't just workers, they are the heart of the company. When treated with respect, fairness, and appreciation, they perform better, creating a healthier work environment and a stronger business overall. In the end, Ethan's greatest takeaway was simple: leadership is earned through action, not just authority. A business is only as strong as the people who run it.